Thank you very much, Fisher. A wonderful introduction there, and I have no doubt that's really set the session up very, very well for this evening. Of course, I am in the UK, so it's 10 a.m. here in the UK. I know it's a little bit later over there in China, so welcome to our session. Fantastic, thank you. Okay, we can record the session, and then this can be made available to you later. Thank you. My business is 123 People Development. We pride ourselves in developing people. We work with AQR International and also Resilient Pilot. We do a mentoring service for here in the UK and worldwide. Thank you. I won't read the slide. Everything is there, like I've said. I've been in learning and development for about 14, 15 years, and I pride myself on making individuals even better versions of themselves. Okay, so what we're going, sorry, I think I've muted myself. So what we're going to be doing this morning is looking at evidence-based practice using the MTQ. We're going to look at the mentor skills, results and data, and then we're going to open up for a Q&A. Okay, so talked just a moment ago about evidence-based practice. So what is that? This is where we have the opportunity to measure the effectiveness of our interventions, whether it be training programs, mentoring sessions, coaching sessions within individuals and organizations. So what does that mean then in relation to mentoring, and how do we measure it? So one of the tools that we use in our programs is a tool called the MTQ that I mentioned just a moment ago. This has, as you can see, 4 development areas, each broken into 2 segments. Fantastic. What we normally do when we work with an individual or a team, we provide one report before they start the training, and one report or the mentoring, and one report after, so we can demonstrate the shift. So how can we use this with our mentoring sessions with individuals and within organizations? So the MTQ measure, like I've just mentioned, is broken down into 4 sections. Wonderful. We have control, we have commitment, we have challenge, and we have confidence. So if we look at control first, we have life control and we have emotional control. With commitment, we have achievement orientation, which I will explain more in just a moment, and goal orientation. With challenge, we look at how individuals approach risk and then how much they learn from taking that chance or that risk. And then the final C is confidence. Confidence in our own abilities, and interpersonal confidence is confidence in groups. So let's look at these in a little bit more detail. So let's look at life control first of all. We have someone with a high sense or somebody with a more low sense. Absolutely. So someone with a high sense of life control would see the solution rather than the problem. Someone with a low sense would tend to wait for things to happen to them rather than take the initiative. So if we move to emotional control, someone with a high sense of emotional control would have high levels of self-awareness, and they would recognize when they will be emotionally impacted. And somebody with a low sense of emotional control, so in other words, maybe when something goes wrong, they maybe sulk when things don't go their way. As you will see as we work through the MTQ, they all interlink. So let's look at achievement orientation. This is where an individual would set down a task and they would be committed to complete it. So somebody with a high sense would maintain focus and concentration. Somebody with a low sense of achievement orientation, they may lack self-discipline. They may even self-sabotage themselves for maybe the task or completing whatever it is that they have set down to do. Goal orientation, somebody with a high sense would see goals, maybe targets, etc. It would motivate them. They would visualize success and they would go for it. Somebody with a low sense of goal orientation could find goals or targets or even tests quite intimidating. This could potentially impact their performance and, as we've just seen, maybe their emotional control. This is where we start to see them interlink. So let's move to risk orientation. Somebody with a high sense of risk orientation, sometimes they can get quite bored and they will provoke change, sometimes just for the sake of doing so. Somebody with a low sense of risk orientation, they tend to like staying within their comfort zones. They like to feel safe and secure, so they take very little risks. This could prevent them from growing and moving forwards. If we move to learning orientation, somebody with a high sense, if they take a risk, they are then keen to try things out, or they have learned from their mistakes. Somebody with a low sense of learning orientation, though, they may take a chance, but they don't learn from their mistakes. They will continue to repeat the same thing. We tend to see this in individuals where they continuously repeat and not understand their part when things go wrong. A good example of this is a famous quote. I found 2,000 ways of how to not make a light bulb. Thomas Edison said that. In other words, Thomas Edison continued to make mistakes, but he carried on to find eventually the correct way on how to create a light bulb. So a really good example of somebody with that goal orientation and a really high learning orientation. So the final C is the confidence. And if we look at somebody with confidence and abilities with a high sense, they don't need encouragement and they don't need others to tell them that they are doing a good job. They recognize their own skills. Somebody with a low sense of confidence and abilities, though, they may not recognize their own skills. They may not be confident. Even sometimes if they are the subject matter expert, they would sit back and stay in the background. This could be linked to low self-esteem and a superb topic to mentor on. Interpersonal confidence is about how we collaborate with others. Somebody with a high sense of interpersonal confidence, they'll very easily lead meetings, presentations, and interviews and not feel intimidated. Absolutely. Somebody with a low sense of interpersonal confidence, though, they may not speak up or they may even back down if they are challenged. So that's just a very quick look at the 4 C's. But let me tell you a little bit more about the MTQ. This psychometric tool has been around now for over 20 years. It was designed to measure how individuals respond to pressure and stress. It provides 3 reports that we can use as a mentoring tool. We can use this one-to-one with a person or with teams, as we can get data at individual level or group level. There has also been over 210 white papers written on this particular subject. So from an academic perspective, it has the kudos to provide real evidence. When you complete the report, you're provided with 3. There is an assessor report, which can be used for recruitment. There is a development report, which you, the individual yourselves, read. And there is a coaching and mentoring report, which the coach or the mentor would use to indicate and to direct the conversation. The reports look like this. So as you can see, each segment that we have just been speaking about is broken down into what is called a STEN, or a standard 10 scale. This is a real report from a senior executive in an organisation. This report here, as you can see, this individual has an overall mental toughness score of 7, which is just an average score. As a mentor, we focus on what we call the outliers. Outliers. So the outliers are these, the ones that are furthest away from the centre. So this report, if I was mentoring this individual, I would first of all be noticing high risk orientation, high confidence in abilities because he has a 9. However, I notice positive learning orientator, which is a 2, and a low emotional control score of 3. This individual was changing and taking risks within the organisation a lot. However, he wasn't learning when things went wrong. This was impacting him emotionally, and his team felt it. He was difficult to work with as he was moody and unpredictable. So we didn't just work with him, we worked with the whole team to improve the situation. This is just one example of how very easily you can see behaviours that are demonstrated that can be worked with your mentor. Sometimes to make it more visual, we use this particular graphic, which tends to help people visualise their position. So the report that you have just seen, I have put onto this particular graphic. Individuals with a low self-awareness, even if they are scoring high on the scales, this can be quite detrimental, not only to themselves, but also to others around them. So how can we use this as a tool, like I've just mentioned to you? You know, what would you ask if that was your mentee's report? I think sometimes we feel as the mentor, we need to provide all of the information and knowledge, which by definition of mentor means we are the subject matter expert. However, we need to understand the individual fully first. So the way that we can do this is by asking questions. And the questions that we can ask are things like, what are your initial thoughts when you look at the report? What are the first things that you notice? Because it isn't down to us as the mentor to tell them our opinion. What surprises you about your report? Maybe that it is highlighted. How does your emotional control affect your decision making? So if we were using that report a moment ago, that would be a great question to ask. Also, again, thinking of that report, what risks do you take without careful consideration? And how do you apply the learning when things go wrong? The skills of a great mentor will determine the outcome of those sessions. So, what skills do we need to develop or within our workshops that will help develop and improve the mentor? So when we train mentors, we do it in a very specific way. We deliver the training on Zoom, and it is highly interactive. We do deliver the training face-to-face, but of course with COVID, that hasn't been possible in the last 2 years. But the programme is designed in a way that provides opportunities for the mentors to practice their skills. We also focus our attention on contracting, whether that be within an individual mentoring session or even with teams. Contracting is important so both the mentor and the mentee understand how to work best together. Things that can be highlighted are things like confidentiality and how you wish to work together. We also look at personal values, which is what underpins all of us. The reason we look at these is if there is any difference between the mentor and the mentee that could create conflict. We also look at questioning techniques using the GROW model, so goal, reality, options, and way forwards. This provides an opportunity for further structure for the conversation to explore each of the areas in turn. With the GROW model, we look at questioning techniques, a little bit like what we've looked at just a moment ago when we looked at the report. We look at using open questions like these 6 here, the who, what, where, etc. These encourage the individual to speak and to talk so the mentor can fully understand their situation. There are also TED questions, tell me, describe, explain. It should be the other way around. These allow individuals, again, especially ones that are a little bit more reluctant to speak, to describe in detail their position. And if we need to go a little deeper and get more detail, we can use words like specifically, exactly, and precisely. In my opinion, questioning is one of the best tools that we will ever learn. There is a very famous quote from a guy called Stephen Covey: seek first to understand, then be understood. This means as the mentor, we need to understand them first. That's why questioning is so important. We also, in the workshop, do some really interactive listening activities, which helps us tune in when we're listening to our mentees. And things that we can listen for are things like limiting beliefs. When we hear somebody say, ooh, I can't do that, or I'm not sure, or I think, we can challenge them. This is a great opportunity to challenge mindsets. There is another great quote: if you think you can, or if you think you can't, you're right. And that was Henry Ford who said that. Very true. One other tool that we use is looking at communication styles, and there are 4 of them. The blue is analytical. The red can be very direct and quite abrupt sometimes. And the yellow can be quite fun and free. It's important to understand our own style, but then, of course, the style of our mentee as well. We also use a game called Dobble, which we use as a visualization exercise. We encourage the mentee to choose a particular symbol on the card and talk about it in relation to their particular issue or goal. Visualization is a powerful tool and it can help individuals focus. We also do a mentor observation session. So in other words, an opportunity to practice in a safe environment and get some feedback. This is one of the most important elements, especially from the EMCC, because we need to understand that that individual has the correct skills before we sign individuals off on accreditation. We also do supervision, a very important facet to the mentor to speak openly, one-to-one or in groups, about their mentoring practice with an accredited individual. This is a mandatory requirement for all coaches and mentors who are accredited. Also, within the workshop design, we talk a lot about reflection, self-reflection. This develops us as a mentor so we can be more effective with our mentees. And even though we are the mentor, we still request permission to share our thoughts and options within that mentoring session. So, what results do we see when we use this particular tool? So I will share with you now some data. This is real data from 40 individuals that were tested before the interventions and after. If we look at control first, the pale colours are before the intervention, the darker colours are after. This, of course, was life control and emotional control, and as we can see, there has been quite a large shift further down the scales, which demonstrates individuals are more aware. If we also look at commitment, again, pale before, dark after. So this is achievement orientation and goal orientation, and we can see there how the scales have moved down to improve those scores for the individuals. Challenge was about risk and learning orientation, and again we can see the difference between the two. Sometimes, as you can see, they go backwards. And this could mean that there is recognition and awareness that has been developed within the individual. Our final C is confidence. Huge differences within individuals' confidence and interpersonal confidence. This is where we see the biggest shift when we use this tool. We have used this tool with an organisation called Resilient Pilot. This is for pilots that have been affected by the pandemic. This has impacted their confidence and sometimes their risk orientation for even getting back into aviation. The final element is the overall scores. And as you can see, again, the blue is before, the orange is after the interventions. Absolutely. Other than that, I just want to say thank you. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for being here this evening. Of course, it's evening time for you guys over there and morning here in the UK. And I just want to say thank you. very, very much.